Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I am Kyle. That is Sean.
What? Hello.
And Sean, as we get started here today, I got to tell you, yesterday I got a flat tire, man, while I was driving.
That's not, dude, I'm so sorry. It's not funny.
No, don't laugh. No, so I was passing this person, and like I was driving the speed limit, passing somebody, but as I was passing them, I got up to like 80 miles an hour, right? So right when I looked down, I was going 80, I was like, all right, I better slow down once I get around this person, and the light on my dash goes off for the air pressure thing. I'm like, oh, that sucks. I gotta fill my tire when I get home. And then I start hearing this, and there was a truck behind me. And so I thought it was his Jake brake. Like, it sounded exactly like that. So I'm driving along, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, finally I realize it's my tire and it's flat. So I pull over to the side of the road, and I have roadside assistance through my insurance. So I filed a claim on my phone, and like the claim was filed within like, I don't know, 30 minutes of when I pulled over. So I was driving on my way to a friend's place for dinner. So I had to call him. I'm not coming to dinner because I'm sitting on the side of the freeway right now. So anyway, I filed the claim. The guy's coming, but it took 2 hours for him to show up.
My goodness.
So everything's fine. It was just not a fun. I literally sat in my car for 2 hours on the side of the highway.
Oh, jeez.
So
yeah,
anyway,
that is not fun.
So how'd your day go yesterday?
Oh, my day was great. Actually, I had family in town. My mom and her husband and some friends and really good friends of mine. We all went to a winery and drank a lot of wine at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Nice. There you go.
It was amazing. So while you were stuck on the side of the road, I was laughing it up with wine and cheese and salami.
Rub it in, why don't you? Nice. So while I was on the side of the road, I happened to have a box of books in my car. They were left there from the last thing I went to.
A box of your books.
Oh yeah, my books in my car.
Just a random box of books from the library.
Yeah, and so I reviewed chapter 7 of my book because we decided that's what we talk about today. It's all about the patient and the scientist. But anyway, I got a good...
Wait, so because you sat in your car for a couple hours and you had a couple extra of your books, we've got to discuss chapter 7.
Yeah. So the flat tire really worked out for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
So, I understand you read the book a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I read it. I've read chapter 7 probably like 35 times now, and I read it again yesterday in the car because I was sitting there. So I chose a few parts of the book, but of that chapter. So anyone who's read the book is going to know what we're talking about. Hooray. And anyone who doesn't really know exactly like all the words and stuff, you can order the book on Amazon. Or basically anywhere books are sold, you can get the book. And chapter 7 is what we're going to discuss today. It's all about the relationship between the patient and the scientist. So this book is about a bike ride I did with my parents in 2007 when I was sort of struggling and trying to figure out what FA was going to mean for my life. And, I focused on the relationship between the patient and scientist for this chapter because I think it's such an important piece of being able to accept FA. For me, it has been. Understanding the science and building a relationship with scientists has been an important piece for me to be able to figure out where FA fits in my life and to understand that, like, I have a role in this process. Even though the science may be way over my head, a lot of times, it's up to me to try to figure it out and to insert myself into the process.
Mm-hmm. What I love about this particular topic too, Kyle, isn't, today obviously your book and maybe a lot of our dialogue is all about FA. But the truth of the matter is the topic expands to every sort of condition out there, whether it's FA or cancer or something else, some other rare disease. What we're talking about today isn't necessarily just a chapter out of Kyle's book. It's this mentality of what part I can play in the process of hope and a cure and fighting and living and all those things in one. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, so I think the central question sort of is, we've talked about it quite a few times. Like, you go to these symposiums about the science behind FA, and you're struggling to stay awake sometimes, right? Because the science is way over your head, and you're just going, "Why am I even here?" But I just think it's such an important part because I think it empowers us to understand our place in the process, and it helps us understand that we are an essential part of the process too, and we have the power to speed things up. And so I think that's kind of the answer to the question, why should we even learn about the science, And so, one of the things that I wrote about in this chapter was that we can't even do that unless we're educated. We can't put ourselves into the process and move things forward quickly unless we're educated. Unless we know about the science. So I spent a couple of pages talking about, what happens when we're not, why we need to be educated and stuff. And then there's this one paragraph that I feel like kind of sums it up in a little bit here. And so this paragraph says, dialogue pushes understanding in both directions. And that's speaking of, the scientist and the patient. All right. When patients and family look at research and expect black and white answers, they don't exist. However, when patients can temper their reactivity and learn how to manage their own expectations, they can maneuver around the complexity of the science. They can learn the language of the disease and build a knowledge base that leads to understanding. And so, if we want to insert ourselves in the process and start building relationships with science so we can help move things forward, I feel like it's like any other relationship, like any other conversation in life. Like, you can't just come into a conversation and be like, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I want to start talking anyway. Like, that doesn't even work, right? So you have to build a base of understanding. You have to find out as much as you can about the disease. And you know what? Maybe a lot of times it starts with a bunch of questions, right? Because you're unclear on things. But you've got to make the effort to get informed so you can be in that conversation.
How informed do you think somebody needs to be? Because I think we've talked about it before, but I'll admit right now, I rarely pay attention to the science. I think I have a pretty basic understanding of what the process is and what's breaking down in our body. And I try to kind of keep up on the progress of research in our world today. But generally speaking, the science isn't up Sean's alley.
Right.
In particular, so I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. To what extent do you think being educated is a level of enough, if that's even possible?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. And, what I'm thinking is that to show interest is where it begins, right? And, if you have a friend that's not into not into comedy, because you used to do a lot of comedy and performing and stuff, if they don't know anything about it, there's no starting point for a conversation there, right?
Sure.
So I think even the littlest bit is a start, and just to show that you're interested in what's going on, I think that's where the conversation starts. So maybe that's enough, right? And it builds from there.
Sure.
So
I think one thing comes to mind right now, and maybe I don't even know how this fits, but when you talk about having a basic understanding, when something that commonly happens in somebody not understanding how it works, when you're talking about, for FA specifically, the root cause is the protein, for the frataxin, we're not producing enough.
No, that's wrong. It's something. I'm just kidding. No, that's right.
I'm like, something changed then. No, so the point is when you're talking to somebody that maybe has no clue, maybe it's a new friend or a new connection, like, oh yeah, the root cause is this protein. We don't produce enough. It doesn't travel correctly through the body. And then they're like, oh, well, can you just like infuse more? They have this uneducated, like, oh, just take a pill of frataxin. That'll fix everything, right? And of course, on the surface, you would think, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Give me a pill and everything's fine, right? But when you're totally clueless and you just don't have an idea, those types of questions are okay. But obviously, you're going to have to dig a little more for there to be a reasonable answer or a reasonable response or a reasonable process to actually get to the bottom of why that does or does not work.
Yeah, no, I agree. That is totally accurate.
And if you don't know what to talk about, the conversation ends right there. So if somebody asks, oh, can you just take more frataxin? And then you say, no, it doesn't work that way. Okay, how's it work? I don't know. So anyway, how about that game?
Yeah, no, I think that it helps us objectively look, like we can remove the emotion for a little bit and objectively talk about our disease from a point of like, this is the science, this is the black and white. Holy cow, we can make it black and white for a second, because a lot of times it's not. It gets mixed up in all of our emotions. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I'm going to need a wheelchair, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, we can make it black and white for a second. I think that's pretty powerful. I think I was talking in non-concrete terms about how we can push science forward. And I was thinking of a passage here that I was looking for. So when you meet a researcher and they finally see FA in the flesh, like up to that point, until somebody meets somebody who has FA, it's cells in a dish, and it's theories, and it's all in their mind until they meet somebody. And so this paragraph that I was thinking about, it says, researchers see how the disease physically manifests in a person. They see the actual effects of frataxin deficiency and iron overload in cells, which translates to walking, talking, and managing the physical realm. Some of these observations might lead to insights, creating more questions and more opportunities. So, I think there's a couple aspects to it. You can imagine that just meeting somebody else, when a researcher meets a patient, there's all of a sudden there's the human element, and that's a very emotional connection to their work. All of a sudden there's so much purpose, right? But I also think it's very concrete and pragmatic. Like, they can actually see what it means, like how the disease manifests in a person, like it says here, and they can see that maybe they have another question. They're like, oh, we should test this because I saw that, and so I think in those two ways, that's how the relationship between the patient and the scientist pushes science forward. Does that make sense?
And it's given the scientists some context. Like you said, until they meet somebody, it's just pieces, it's just writing on paper or cells in a dish or in a lab somewhere. There's nothing significant about it. Maybe,
right.
To an extent. But once you can shake somebody's hand or put a name to a face, and you're like, oh, this stuff's real.
Yeah, and then I feel like all of a sudden, like, I have this imagination or whatever that, they're working on cells in a dish, and then all of a sudden my face shows up in the dish,
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is what I'm working for. I'm working for Kyle and Sean and Mary and Nigel and whoever else,
Sure.
So it's really, really powerful.
I would say it's probably just as powerful for the patient as well. When when you see the science or you meet somebody or you're able to attend a conference and hear from someone or even to shake hands, you realize, okay, there really is something going on. People are really doing something for this. It's not just an idea somebody wrote about in a medical journal 20 years ago and that's that.
Right. Yeah, totally. It becomes real, and you understand. You're like, I always relate it back to you're sitting around the table, the kitchen table, with your family, and going, "What the heck are we going to do about this? No one even knows about this. No one even cares." Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you realize that other people care, and they're working hard, and they're dedicating their lives to solving this problem, and that is incredibly empowering. So we've established that it's important to be a part of the process to get informed, and it's important to have interactions with scientists. I wanted to share a little bit about, so I went to, in 2007, I rode my trike from, we started in San Diego, and this interaction happened in Houston at the Albert B. Alkek Institute of Technology in Houston. It was a really amazing experience. Met some really cool researchers, Dr. Bob Wells and Dr. Merrick Naparella. And I'm still friends with both of them today. But I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts about after we left that, like how it changed things for me, because during my trip, I was struggling with my disease, right? With the disease and figuring out how it was going to work in my life. How I was going to be in a wheelchair soon, and I would likely die a premature death due to heart disease. And I was trying to figure all of that out. And then I went to this research facility in Houston, and I met the scientists and got a little more informed about the disease. And so, here we go. Page 132. After we left the Houston Research Facility, my pedal strokes changed. For the first time in my short riding career, I experienced the distinction between pedaling hard and pedaling strong. Cycling toward the Louisiana border, I began to pedal strong. When you pedal hard, there's less purpose. You pedal with unrestrained and unfocused energy. With hard, there's effort, but without the temperance of control. The previous year, when I attempted to ride from Sacramento to San Francisco, I was a novice rider. I was driven to succeed, focused on overcoming the challenge, and I pedaled hard. As a result, I injured my knee, which now impacted the entire ride across the country. When you pedal strong, you exert more control in your riding. You have more purpose, more awareness in each revolution of your cranks. The experience translates to less effort. Your posture changes, your breathing changes, and most important, you don't wear yourself out. It doesn't hurt to know what you're riding for. And so I just feel like, you know, when you get educated, the injection of knowledge really empowers you to take control and to be confident in your life, in your handling of the situation. And so I relate to cycling, and I mean, I think it probably relates to a lot of other things too, but that's how I took it and related it at the time.
Well, I think it's certainly valuable to put it in some sort of context that relates to one's life or condition or circumstances. When you can find a way to relate to it, or to apply it to your particular journey, like you said, it gives you a little more power, and it helps you define and identify a purpose that hopefully keeps you moving forward.
Yep.
I think that whole analogy is true in any world of sport, right? It's marathon running or mountain climbing. It's you got to pace yourself. You can't just right out the gate start. What's the word? Running fast. What's the word for that?
Sprint.
Yeah, you can't start sprinting and expect to hold that, you know, for 26.2 miles or whatever it may be. Same as true on a mountain, you know, sometimes you gotta stop and take a break or just slowly one foot in front of the other. So it's that idea of tempering yourself and knowing exactly where you're going and not just running for the sake of speed.
Yeah, where and why. Like, I think the why relates to everything. Like, why get out of bed in the morning? Well, because we got to get stuff done, right? We gotta improve our lives. We gotta do these projects that we have, whatever it is. And so I think it really relates to everything, especially that last line. It doesn't hurt to know what you're writing for. It doesn't hurt to know what you're getting out of bed for, what you're whatever, getting on the rowing machine, writing an essay, like that, you know, to always have the end goal in mind and know what you're doing, whatever you're doing for. So that is the thought of the day. Nice. And so at this point, I encourage everyone once again to go out and buy the book if you haven't already. Shameless plug. But
that's cool.
So, Sean, thanks for having a conversation with me today. And we will continue learning about FA and interacting with scientists because we know that it will speed the process and get us closer to a treatment and a cure much more quickly.
Of course, and I think I do want to say, Kyle, just for the sake of our listeners, again, it's not just about a plug for your book. It's about encouraging people to explore all the different science in your world, everything working in your world. And if there's nothing going on, let's say your condition is so incredibly rare and there's nothing going on, be the beacon, be the person that starts the machine. You know, whether it's FA or cancer or whatever else it may be, nothing gets cured overnight. The hope is that it doesn't take 100 years, but you've got to start somewhere. And the more educated everybody can be in the process, the more effective the entire process is going to be.
I agree. I like it. So there was one thing you said that I need you to clarify. What does it mean that you got to be the bacon? Is that what you said?
Oh,
the beacon.
Beacon. Sorry. Yeah, I talk funny.
I was like, what did you say?
You got to be the side dish at brunch, you know?
I was like, does that mean you got to like
beacon.
sizzle loudly or something?
No, like the beacon of light, the boat light at, what do they call that? The light tower thing.
Yeah.
What do they call that? Man, I'm struggling with my words today.
I can't even think of it either. The lighthouse. Thank you.
Lighthouse.
There you go. Got it. Good. All right. All right, man.
I'm sure we just embarrassed ourselves for 28 minutes on this one.
I think, you know what? I think we made our point, and we should probably end this before it gets any worse. So.
Sounds good. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and please subscribe on the iTunes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.